Welcome to the Red Dice Diaries, and in this video I'm going to be looking at the cinematic Environs mountain book written by Davey Brion Jackson and published by Critical Hit Publishing. Now this costs a few pounds in British money, which I think is just over $4 US. The copy I'm reviewing is a 30-page colour PDF that's available from Drive-Thru RPG, and I'll put a link in the description of this video to where you can get that. Now, this is the third in Critical Hit Publishing's cinematic Environs series, books designed to give you a few different ideas and toys to play with concerning different types of terrain. I reviewed the first two, Arctic lands and desert wastes, already. You can see these reviews by clicking here and here. Now, these books are mainly for D&D 5th edition, and as with the previous two books, the publication opens by detailing what the authors call the Rule of Three. Effectively, the author posits the idea that a game will offer a differing amount of chances to fail before the consequences really hit home. The more chances you have, the more cinematic the game. The book describes one chance as a realistic, brutal setting, and three as a sort of high-action, over-the-top or cinematic setting. I assume, given the name of the book, that the author's preference is for the over-the-top cinematic type of game, which is absolutely fine. And I like they define what they mean by the term. And to be honest, I don't think it would be too difficult to tweak the material in this book to fit with your own personal tastes as regards to brutality or cinematic action with fairly minimal effort. As I said earlier, the books are designed principally for D&D 5th edition, and the rules certainly focus on that. Although there's a fair amount to recommend them for other games where the PCs want to bring the terrain more to the centre stage. The introduction concludes with a handy list of definitions and terms, which could save looking up stuff in the main rulebooks. Now, I'm a huge fan of this. Anything which could be done to minimise book flipping in a game gets a big 2 thumbs up from me. We then move on to a chapter describing mountainous conditions. Now, some of these are obvious, like temperatures lowering and the effects of altitude, but there are others that you may not have considered, which could be used to add a bit of extra flavour and interest to your game. I particularly liked the suggestion about liquid freezing at particularly low temperatures, which seems obvious, but it's not something I'd ever considered, and it could certainly be challenging to anyone hoping to swig down a healing potion whilst being beaten upside the head by a mountain-dwelling owlbear. I can see this chapter being very useful to have printed out and the terrain conditions to hand during a session, especially if you, as a GM, are running a wilderness campaign and you need to pull on some knowledge quickly when your players unexpectedly decide that a jaunt in the mountains is just the thing. It might be nice for the terrain conditions to be summarised on some sort of GM cheat sheet. Now, I know that Critical Hit Publishing are planning to compile these terrain splat books into a single publication with some extra material. I think something like a cheat sheet for terrain conditions would be a great inclusion, so fingers crossed. An interesting extra in this chapter was the section on falling damage. The author suggests that instead of just suffering hit point damage from falling, the character takes constitution damage and a number of broken bones. Although I couldn't actually find details on how broken bones would have an effect anywhere in the book. Apologies if I've missed that. And the book did tell me to roll randomly which bones were broken, but I dare say I could come up with something to cover this or grab a critical hit supplement, but it would have been nice to see at least a basic system in the book, although maybe that'll be included in the compilation book, I don't actually know. We then move on to a section dealing with mountain hazards, and these are presented in a similar format to the other books in the series, which is pressure, an idea to bring the obstacle in and to keep the story moving. The if and then paragraph describing consequences to certain likely actions taken by the PCs. Even the odds, a way to randomly determine which PC is targeted by environmental effects. Effectively, each person within the area of the terrain rolls a dice. If they get an even number, it means they're fine, they're not affected by it. On an odd number, they take the effects. The changes section, which are just ways to change up a scene and to keep it interesting. And finally, the fumble crit section, which are just sort of dramatic events to go with either critical successes or critical failures. The hazards listed are an interesting mix of challenges that I can see adding a lot of enjoyment to games, covering everything from bat or disease-infested caves to that favourite staple of Indiana Jones movies, the fraying rope bridge, which is a genre classic I'd love to see gracing more game tables. Finally, in this book, we move on to the appendix, which offers a new D&D 5th edition background, the Mountaineer, along with all the things needed to bring this to life in your D&D 5th edition campaign, and a smattering of items, both mundane and magical, either made for or particularly suitable for mountainous environments. I very much enjoyed reading this book, as I have previous books in the series. They are excellent toolkits for a GM, containing very useful ideas for really making terrain shine as one of the stars of your game, to showing you how to make your journeys hazardous and interesting, rather than just boring slogs from point A to point B. The PDF is nicely illustrated with a muted colour scheme that's very easy on the eye. Some nice artwork scattered throughout, and the content is laid out in a straightforward manner, making it easy to reference during a game session. Definitely a big thumbs up from me, and for a few pounds, what more could you want from an RPG product, really? Sorry, what was that you say? You want airships as well? Well, I think Critical Hit have got you covered there too, but you'll have to wait for my next review. So I hope you've enjoyed this review. You'll consider clicking on the red dice up there to subscribe to my channel. You can catch up with me on all the normal social media, Facebook, Twitter, Google+, etc. If you have any comments about this video, please leave them down below in the comments section. I really enjoy reading what you write. And until I see you next time, take care and happy gaming.